Welcome to Career Lab Wednesday. I'm your host, George Miller, and today we are talking about change. But I want to give a little more context as we're getting going here. So, I'm a coach. I specialize in social and emotional intelligence training. Thank you, Jane. We are up and rolling here on LinkedIn Live and on YouTube. My name's George Miller, your host of Career Lab Wednesday. And the approach that I take with career is that your career is an opportunity for you to learn and grow. It is a space where you spend a lot of time of your life. And we want to look at how you can use any challenges, use any successes, all of that, all the things that you encounter in your career, how you are using that to become who you can become. How can this be a very meaningful experience for you? What are the things that you would like to get support with? And I have a lot of knowledge just from experience in career, but I'm going to tend to lean towards social and emotional intelligence things. I find that as people progress in their career, that's at the heart of a lot of things. If you are looking to have a better relationship with your boss or your team, it often comes down to how you're communicating. And even earlier on in your career, when you're interviewing, how you interview makes a huge impact in what you can get, what opens up for you. So, saying that, I invite all questions. It does not have to necessarily do with this topic. If you have a question about anything small, anything big related to your career, please ask it. There's a few ways that you can engage. I love it when you jump in directly on the Zoom link. I get to talk with you one-to-one that way. If you can't do that, you can always type your questions into the comment section, as well as those of you joining in on Zoom. If you're not able to come on camera and talk, you can always type your questions into the chat. And if you'd like to remain anonymous, let us know. Let me know. You can just say, hey, don't share my name or whatever. That's totally fine. So all that being said, as we're getting going here, my name is George Miller. I'm your host every Wednesday, well, almost every Wednesday, about 50 weeks out of the year. I join in here on YouTube and LinkedIn Live to answer questions about your career, to help you grow and develop and leverage your time and you get the most out of your work. And so there's a few ways you can engage. Again, love it when you jump in directly on Zoom, or you can type your questions and comments into the comment section, and Jane will get those over to me, and I'll do my best to answer them. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our topic this week of mastering change management. Well, that's a lot. There's a whole lot in that. So, I think the overall context I'll lay here is that most of us are probably getting increasingly familiar with change. You may have heard me share previously. We live in a country where there's a lot of change, and businesses change, new technologies are introduced, and that really disrupts the system. And so there's always growing and developing, updating our pedigree, those sorts of things that are important, that are part of having a healthy career. That may not always be the case, but it probably is, and that's probably increasing that. I read maybe 5 years ago that everybody who is under the age of 30 at that time is going to have at least 15, is going to work with at least 15 different companies. So embracing change and learning how to move in and out of things as they're changing is probably a very good idea for you just to be considering overall as you're in your career. So I invite any questions about that, about how you might go about embracing change or looking for what you're really wanting, so that as things are coming into your company, into the organization that you're with, how you would be able to navigate that most effectively. So that's the broad topic today. Again, I welcome any questions. You don't have to see a direct connection to this topic. It's welcome. So good to have you all on. As I see, we've got Eric here. Eric, is there anything that you'd like to update us on? I know you have been interviewing quite a lot. Totally. So great. So there's a few ways that you can engage. You can always jump in directly on Zoom, or you can type your questions into the comment section. So again, as we're talking about change management, so as a company grows, as a company is existing, the marketplace changes. And as that happens, laws change, new technologies are introduced, and all of this impacts how a company delivers its services. And so it's a challenge because we go to school, we get a job, and we understand it as a certain way. And then that is inevitably going to change. And a lot of times the communication between the partners in a firm, the owners of a company, they may not even understand what is really needed. Sometimes they do, but then how does that get communicated? How does that need get communicated to the people who are making it happen? And that right there is a huge challenge that a lot of companies will struggle with. And very often when a big change comes in an organization, lots of layoffs happen. It oftentimes is harder for somebody to learn new skills within an organization. And so the need just isn't there. And that I think has put a lot of people out of work over the past few years. A lot of people that I've talked to, it's something that comes up. It's incredibly challenging. And managing those changes is something that I think people really struggle with. And there's a lot that could be gained. I'll share some examples, and I just hope that this will land for people as you're listening in. I hope that this will serve you. Again, any questions that you have, please feel free to type them into the comment section. So when changes are occurring in an organization, for you to be able to look at that and see what impact you can have, what things you might need to learn, what a client of mine had, her boss basically said, look, there's a new space in technology that's opening up, and I want to assign you to it. I probably understand it less than you do. And I just know that this is a space that I think we're going to need to get into in order for our company to be competitive. And so as she was talking to me about it, she's like, oh, I really don't want to get into this. This is I don't know. I don't know where this is going to go. I don't know that I'm any good at this. But as we talked about it, she was like, basically I'm getting a thumbs up from my boss that I can't really make a mistake here. I mean, the biggest mistake would be to not take this challenge on. The biggest mistake would not to be to engage in this kind of unknown territory for our industry. So, you know what? I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna try this out. And as she did that, it was incredibly important, because it played out that way, that this new technology became increasingly important for that company. And so as she she made herself more and more relevant, to the marketplace and to that company as things were changing, securing her position there. Now, it did require her to be with higher levels of discomfort, um, and to do some things that she hadn't expected to do. At the same time, she also then learned more about herself, learned more about some of her capabilities, and even established new relationships within her field. And so, always paying attention to what's coming down the road and what your boss or managers, what they really need. That is a wonderful thing, because even then too, if you get to a point where layoffs are happening, most, I mean, every company I've ever worked with, they hate doing them. They hate laying people off. It's like incredibly painful, even if like they know that it needs to happen. And so having good rapport in that process really helps launch you to whatever's happening next as best as it can. And so the now, as those of you know who join in here, I always take it back to social and emotional intelligence. And this plays out very much here. So as change is happening, the ability to be present with the most basic of my feelings: fear, hurt, anger, sadness, joy. That allows me to be really clear about what's needed and to make accurate assessments of what I'm feeling afraid about. And so if I'm afraid that I might be losing my job, or afraid that layoffs are coming my way, I may try to speed that change up just because I don't like the discomfort of it. I might say, you know what, I'm just going to leave while I can. And a lot of times it might be totally fine to do, totally understandable. And of course, you would want to be looking for what's next. Absolutely. That's using your fear in a good way. But it might also be helpful to use that fear to have some meaningful conversations within the organization that you're already in, and to say, hey, is there anything that I need to be concerned about? And to bring that question up, because that is bringing you into closer relationship with people around you, and taking some of those moment by moment risks with people is often a really good thing to do more of as you're developing. This makes me think of another person I'm working with who, the first big risk that she took was in telling her current boss, hey, there's changes happening here that I don't really like, and I get that it needs to happen. And so, I wanted to be upfront with you and let you know that I'm starting to look other places. And so that when I leave, that there's a good transition here. Now, that was a huge risk for her to take. But when she did some soul searching and said, you know what, if I was my boss, I would want my employee to tell me that. And and the truth of it too was that there's no way that he would just let her go because she's really valuable. So she kind of, it was even affirming to her to go through this. But that's an uncomfortable conversation. So she does that, and sure enough, her boss, he's not happy that she's looking elsewhere, but he thanks her, you know, and it's like, okay, great. So you're looking at that time. Thank you. This is going to give me time to be able to look and onboard. And now it's even going to have her able to help onboard somebody possibly if it's able to work out that way. And so now she's also able to use this person, her boss, as a reference. And I mean, when you're out interviewing, does it get any better than that to be able to say, yeah, my current boss, I'm happy to give you their information for you to connect with them and, check me out that way. That's incredibly powerful. And so taking these smaller, oftentimes very uncomfortable risks, but being able to assess, what, this is a worthwhile risk to take here. That can really build your confidence and build the way that your team or your bosses or managers see you and value and say, you know what, this is somebody of character. I really appreciate them being honest with me. And that can go a long way. Now, of course, there certainly are times where that's not a good idea, where you're not going to want to share that you're looking elsewhere. But I'm saying this from 10 years of doing this, like, I don't know, roughly 90% of the time, it is actually a good idea. So think about that as we're having this discussion about change management, about what are the uncomfortable but meaningful conversations you could have right where you're at that help you develop. Because again, the game that we're talking about here in your career is, how do you reach your potential? How can you use your job, your current environment, to be deepening your character, helping you become the person that you want to become? And that will go a long way. And these social emotional intelligence skills of being present with your core feelings, this stuff is key. So that's my rant for the beginning of this. Again, would love to have people jump in with any questions. Any questions career related are welcome. And I would love to check in with Eric. Eric, I know you've been sharing your journey with us over the past few years, and I would love to see if you've got any updates for us. Go ahead and jump in whenever you're able to.
Yeah, so I had been applying for a few things, uh, less than stellar updates.
Oh,
So I think I
sorry to
told
hear
you,
that.
yeah, it just how the cookie crumbles. So there's one I'd been rejected for that I think I told you about a few weeks ago, or a couple weeks ago, and then I'd gotten an offer for one of the roles, but the compensation is just not it just doesn't work for me, and I feel like that's probably going to be, unfortunately, what makes the that role fall through. And then when I called the HR contact I had for another role, they told me that they were going to go with somebody else anyway. So it's like, well, at least now I know, I guess. So much for using the two against each other. Uh, so just less than ideal, but it's just again how it goes sometimes. And
So you're finding out that the role that you were applying for, that you weren't going to get what you would need to get in order for you to do it.
yeah, I mean, all the other benefits are really nice. It's just the salary is just I can't. It doesn't make sense for me to take what they're offering. Uh,
Okay.
the HR person, she's going to work with the hiring manager to see what they can do, but it's a pretty it's a pretty decent gap. I don't think it's anything unreasonable um, for what I'm asking for the. It's basically a senior individual contributor role. Um, but you know, while all the other benefits are really nice, unfortunately, that doesn't make up for what I'm getting paid month to month, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak. So we'll see what happens with that. And yeah, and then there's another senior individual contributor role that I'd applied for, and I was calling to let them know that I'd gotten an offer from company A, and then company B, said, yeah, you're an awesome candidate, but they're going to offer somebody else for this role. So best of luck to you. Appreciate your time.
Uh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, so that was a bummer. That basically all happened yesterday, kind of finding out all that info. Yeah, so definitely a bummer, but just keep uh, chugging along and applying to more other
What,
stuff.
what, this is often it might be a really good time for you to process what you're learning by doing what you're doing, by continuing to reach out and look for how to advance. What what are some of the key takeaways you're getting?
Yeah, I think our discussion a couple weeks ago, I think it was. I missed last week. I have two sick kids, and it was just a long Wednesday last week.
Yeah.
But I think the discussion we had, kind of thinking to that, I think one, rephrasing what I do for a living and how explaining that to people, and then also thinking to the end of a response to a situation, or not a situation, but a behavioral question, and then working backwards to make a brief, kind of situation, task, action, and having a brief or a more concise answer. I think those were two really, I think, key takeaways that I've taken. Of course, it's hard to get anything more direct, right? Because nobody gives you feedback. But I think those two takeaways that we talked about last week, I think have been really, really huge going through everything.
Oh, good. Oh, good to hear. Okay. So cool. I think I might share a little bit more about those for everybody listening in a moment. I'm I'm also thinking about you as over the past couple years, how um you continue to use your energy to look for what's possible. And by doing that, you have alerted people within your organization and elsewhere that you're somebody who grows of their own initiative, and that you're not somebody that needs to be motivated. you
Right,
you already are. And so that, just as a person, just as a somebody who works with other people, um
right,
understanding that about yourself and other people knowing that about you, that goes a long way. And um then you've also, because you've been taking action, you've been getting feedback about areas for you to develop. And so when you're um, doing your job, interacting with people, you're able to be thinking about, okay, how am I doing at connecting with people? How am I
right,
doing it with building rapport? And without you taking the initiative in the first place, it's like you wouldn't even know. You wouldn't know what you didn't know. And
right, right,
and by way of that, now it's like you can be learning and paying attention to this stuff, being aware that, okay, here's some potential areas for me to grow and develop. And that's even then as you've been looking, you're aware of, I'll call it your leadership edge. You're aware of, okay, this would be interesting and challenging to me in a way where I want to develop. And so that then, gives you more direction of what's meaningful to you. And now tying it up into communicating, and one of the things that I know we've talked about, and I think this is relevant for like a lot of people, anybody who's listened into any of the interview prep sessions that I've done on here, so often learning to bottom line a response to a question is it's just a real skill. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we I might have shared about one of my clients who's incredibly, she's wicked smart, and has literally spent whole sessions with me where all she does is explain things to me in a way that I actually understand what she's talking about.
Right.
And it's so helpful to her, because then she's like, oh my gosh, when I'm pitching, when I'm, having um dinners with potential clients, etc., like I can actually talk to them in a meaningful way. And so that's one of the binds of specialization. You can do your job so well, but do you know how to communicate that you do it well?
Right. Right.
So I think that's, it sounds like some of what you've been working on in these interview processes, of being able to say, here's the results that I get. And so I'm curious, is there anything where you're currently at that you would be able to improve upon, Eric?
I think continuing to work on bottom lining responses to the behavioral questions. Like tell me about a time where you had a conflict in your team and how you resolved it, that kind of questions. I think continuing to practice bottom lining answers to those, to where, it's 4 or 5 sentences, which I tried to kind of actively do recently when I had an interview for the one job that they told me I wasn't going to move forward with. But I think that's something I'll need to continue to practice and work on, because I still have a bad habit of diving too much into details that aren't necessarily going to be relevant. So I think that's something I'll need to continue to work on.
Okay, so this is now what a key thing that we can do, and this is so everybody listening in, um, see if you can apply this to yourself. So it's a higher stakes scenario when you're interviewing. But is there a way that you could practice that same skill of bottom lining in your day-to-day activities that you're currently doing?
Yeah, I've kind of been doing that a little bit. We kind of talked about it a little bit a while back, where we, with the nature of my role, we have a joint meeting with our sister company and my planning counterparts on their side once a week. And I've been practicing trying to have like a brief update. And part of that is kind of by necessity. There's like a spreadsheet that we used to track certain metrics, and there's like an update space, and it's basically just a single cell. So you have very limited space to put an update, and then as you talk through it in the meeting, I've been trying to be very conscious about, here's, you know 2 to 3 key details about it. Here's ultimately how everything is going, and kind of keeping it to 4 or 5 sentences at most. So I've been trying to do that already a little bit, kind of within that meeting, to practice that internally. That's probably the biggest area that I mean, not the biggest area, but the uh, the first opportunity I can think of to kind of practice those skills in a more repeatable setting, we'll say.
Okay. Okay, cool. I wonder if we can even break it down more. Um, when you're doing when you're delivering that, would it be possible for you to say one sentence and then wait for people's responses?
Um, yeah, I could probably do that with a couple of the areas at least, where I could just do a one sentence update and see what they react to or how they react to it.
Okay. This can be incredibly uncomfortable, but there's a lesson that we have in a program called The Power of Silence. And that paired with making a statement. So, here's the data, and then waiting for somebody to respond can be really useful. It depends on the environment.
Right.
But if that's something that you can start experimenting with, because then you're also developing the skill, just the internal skill for yourself. Welcome, Lucky. Developing the internal skill for yourself of being with the discomfort of not saying anything.
Right. Right.
And so
So yeah, I
then,
could.
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I could definitely try practicing that over the next few weeks and seeing how it goes.
Cool, 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 cool. And it's a low risk environment because
Right.
it's already established. But that way, then when you're going into the interviews, you can be more comfortable with giving a quick response and letting that sit and process for the person interviewing you, and letting yourself maybe even come up with a question that you have for them. And
Right.
there's a way that you can start to slow things down, and just get that practice in. So I think this is great, Eric. I'm glad you're willing to take it on, and I look forward to hearing how it goes, what you find in leaning into the discomfort of staying silent on some things.
Yeah. No, I think it'll definitely make me uncomfortable, but I think that'll be ultimately good in the long run.
Oh, right on, right on. Well, sweet. Well, Eric, thank you so much for the update. And again, sorry that they didn't work out better. But you know, kudos to you for going for it. And that's putting you in a better position. So I want to make sure to acknowledge you about that.
Nope, I definitely appreciate it, and hopefully there'll be better in the future. But I got to drop for a meeting, so thanks again for all the advice, and hopefully I'll be on next week.
Okay. Oh, great. Next week we're not meeting. It's one of the
Oh,
few,
that's right, because it's Thanksgiving week. I gotcha. Okay,
but yeah, we'll be back after that.
I gotcha.
All right, Eric. Well, take care. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks, you too.
Okay.
Well,
Well,
George, you used a phrase which is sort of slipping my mind that I thought was well taken. Using questions to develop your own personality.
oh yeah. Welcome, Lucky. Yes.
And
Yeah. One of the big things that this is my world in coaching, but is to ask a question and then shut up. But
Mhm.
for a lot of people, especially in interviews, is to be able to deliver a sentence or two, a bottom line response, and then to give it some breathing room and have whatever was said sink in for people. And doing that in an environment that I'm already comfortable in, it just helps me prepare for the ones where I'm more uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
Lucky, good to see
asking,
you. What updates do you have with you in your career?
oh, well, I have two careers.
Uh-huh.
The carpentry business and then this emergent hyperbaric oxygen chamber uh, response business. And I'm I'm pretty much afraid of the hyperbaric oxygen because it's a different kind of environment, different people, different questions, different setting. Everything is different. It's like being in two different worlds that seemingly speak the same language, but they don't understand each other. So uh, so I'm a little bit afraid of it, and unconsciously, what goes on is I work much harder on the carpentry business to avoid my fear. And I noticed that part of the time it's unconscious. All of a sudden, then I look over my shoulder and I say, "Why I'm working here?" But so what has gone on in the last month is that I a lot of hard interviewing of applicants, a lot. And I've gotten another seasoned carpenter.
Oh,
And
congratulations.
yeah, and it seems like he's going to stick, but you never know. And two good assistants.
Really?
So yes.
Oh,
So,
good for you.
so now I have to sell my butt off on the carpentry,
Uh-huh.
but it's not as much of a relief because I find activity begets more activity. So now I'm getting more activity on the hyperbaric oxygen side. So I have to work harder there too. And the reality is I enjoy it more. I'm going to change the word from working more. I enjoy being present more. I enjoy being present with more people more often, more of the time. At
Mm.
the end of the day, I'm happier.
Oh, uh-huh.
So from looking at myself emotionally in the mirror, the biggest thing is I see the terror. See and feel the terror of approaching people with hyperbaric more acutely, since it's there's this contrast between the kind of clients that I'm used to talking to the kind of clients I'm not. So rather than so I feel it, and I just dig back in. That's what I do.
Do you know what the fear is about?
Yeah. Oh, I do. There's two parallel fears. One is I've exceeded everything I thought I would do at the beginning of my life. So it's all new ground. And the other is, I guess the other is something. The other is the hyperbaric is really an adaptation of a very proven medical uh, tool. And here I am uncomfortable in a medical profession saying. Now I'm uncomfortable. I don't know that my clients know that, but I am. I know. Yeah, go ahead, George.
So it sounds like the primary reason you're uncomfortable is because it's new territory.
Oh yeah. It's like, here's ice skates, get on the ice.
Do you think that it might be new territory for everybody?
It is it's new territory for the people I call on. Uh, they've often heard the term, but they don't know what it is. And explaining it helps a little bit. But because it's still theory in their in their life, and bringing it to a practical experience. The most I'm able to do right now is build their curiosity, and I'm not sure what it'll take to make it tangible. I'm guessing that seeking out other people in the business who've had success, and most of them are out of state, at least in the part of the field that I'm selling in. In fact, now one of the things that happens, George, when I get on these calls is either the other people on the call get me thinking about things, or you do. So, maybe I just ought to travel out state or find a way in to. I know that the some team members of the Bears have their own hyperbaric systems in their own house, and they do it by themselves. Finding a way into them, finding a way to get a testimonial is an easy thing to put out there, but implementing it, I don't know how I do that.
Yeah, I hear you. It one of the things as you're sharing, Lucky, that I'm thinking about is um it's so easy to have like to just I'm familiar enough with hyperbaric chambers to know some of the benefits of it. And they're nice, but is somebody going to change their daily habits or take the time to do it? And it will most likely be done within a place that they're already familiar with it, where it's an add-on. And I when
I
I
agree with that.
I had a concussion a few weeks ago, and my physical therapist said, I highly recommend you go to the Neurological Wellness Institute. And the only reason I did it was because I really trust my physical therapist. And so I went there, and it was, definitely more money than I wanted to spend and all that. But I just did it like so much based on because somebody whose opinion I value, because they have like proven to me like they've got my body working better than it's worked in like 10 years, you know? So it's like I know that the result is there. And I go into the Neurological Wellness Institute and they have a hyperbaric chamber. And I was like, oh, okay. So it's like I would do this because it's like I'm already like it's already part of something that I'm doing. Now, it turns out they didn't recommend it for me and I wasn't going to pay the extra money to do it. But so I'm just like I think what you're talking about in making those connections, you know, and having somebody that might be out of state or whatever, or just saying, hey, I know this guy that his name's Lucky, and he's a contact in Chicago. Like right there, I see that being um a way that you could get some action is just by continuing to do what you're doing. And I think your idea of seeing about connecting out of state, because there's a lot of people in Chicago. There's a lot of people in the Chicago area. And if somebody has a very specific need and it's like, hey, this is something that's going to help you with that thing, then I could see somebody traveling an hour or whatever to come do what they need to do. So I don't know. That's
Well,
all.
thank you for the reinforcement. I mean, hearing your experience reflecting my general take on things is literally incredibly supportive.
Thanks, Lucky. Good to hear. And I'm increasingly aware too that in part because we don't have the same kind of healthcare system that we had in the past, and we just have different expectations about life, that people are going to continue working longer, and people are going functioning well. Is people are going to value that more and more. Just like me, I'm 41, and I said, okay, I'm going to drop a few grand to go do this thing because the difference that it's going to make for me over the course of 5 years might be significant. If I can think a little faster, if it takes me, a half an hour less each day to make some important decisions, that's going to add up over the course of my career, and it's going to take me further. It's going to help me reach more of my potential. So I'm thinking about things that way more. And I think more and more people are. And that, doing more preventative things, and I would put hyperbaric and neurofeedback and this kind of thing in that category of saying, hey, this is something that I can do now that's going to extend my ability to think clearly and to feel good enough to be able to put in, a good day's work. I think that this kind of thing is only going to grow in popularity.
And seen as a necessity.
Yeah. It's kind of like therapy back in the day, there was all kinds of stigmatism to it. And nowadays it's just like, everybody wants a therapist, and most people are, recognize like, oh yeah, that's a good thing to do when I'm facing some challenges. And it might even be seen as more and more of a necessity. Coaching.
Well, the people who have used this are they are rather healthy folk.
Yeah.
And what they found is that, and I'm quoting what you just said, they get at least a half an hour or more work done every day. Not a few days a week, but every day. And so the simplest reason that it works that I know of is that your body uses all the oxygen you can get. That's why you keep breathing. And if your brain literally is getting 2 to 3 times as much oxygen, it makes more connections. It functions at a higher rate.
Yeah.
And that lasts all day long. So typically, people begin by wondering how often they're going to do it, how often they're going to get into this little white sleeping bag. And then they start making it a priority, not because they get more done than their competition.
Yeah.
So, and it's a good starting point. But anyway, the getting back to where I came in, asking more questions, even when you don't need to ask questions, is great for developing your own personality. It lets you see, it's a mirror to who you are, which is a good way of looking at it. It lets you see what kind of questions you can ask when you want to, when you yearn to, when you want to feel more substantial about yourself.
Lucky, thank you. I think that's really beautiful. That's yeah. To develop oneself by asking questions. I think that's how I'd like to end today. I'm gonna end with being in the space of asking questions.
Terrific.
Well, sweet. Well, Lucky, thanks for jumping in today. Appreciate it.
And thank you for your concise running of an hour.
You're welcome. So hopefully we'll get I'm going to Montrose Harbor more and more since the office closed up downtown. It is a different experience though. It can be a little more dangerous than the beach, but we'll see. And the polar bear clubs are getting going here this year, so I hope to see you in there.
You know what? I wasn't going to say this except now that I have no choice. I've noticed over the last 4 months, you've started to look more and more like Wim Hof.
Oh. Well, I've kept the practice up, so who knows? All right.
George.
Sweet. Well, thank you, Lucky. And thanks everybody for joining in. This is Career Lab Wednesday. Again, next week, I will not be hosting this. It's one of the few weeks that I will be taking off. I'll be traveling east next week and visiting friends and family, so I won't be available. But we'll get started the following week. Career Lab Wednesday, noon to 1 Central. I will see you then. And we can throw into the chat too any of the links. We have a program that I will be leading and kicking off. So leading the group experience as well as the coaching in it. It's called the Foundations of EQ Lab. I don't love the name. Maybe I'll change it. Basically, it's an EQ class, emotional intelligence class. So that is kicking off January 9th. And so if you want more information about that, ask me questions about it. And you can always set up a time to talk with me on my calendar and set up a 15-minute time. I'll serve you as much as I can in that time, maybe answer the questions that you have. And if you need to schedule more time beyond that, we can discuss that there as well. So that's a easy way to get in touch with me. 15 minutes on my calendar. All right. With that, I'll close up today. Thanks, everybody. Many blessings. Happy holidays. We'll see you soon.